Hey, good morning everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Pre-Market Report for Friday, April 6th, 2018. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. I mentioned before that I wasn't really too keen on the up move here. I believe that we still likely have lower to go, perhaps to test and get down a little bit lower and at least retest those lows before we start to push higher. However, that doesn't mean we can't see a little bit of short-term action to the upside, which we have seen here lately. I talked about the 69 quarter level being the major pivot to watch. Really, it's when price starts to get above this level where we have a shot to retrade 2800. So above that level starts to really squeeze. And one thing to keep in mind that I mentioned yesterday as well is that if price flushes to the downside here and then starts to show rejection below the previous session's low, something like this, something like that, that could lead to one more burst of strength higher, which could get you back to the 2731, perhaps even beyond that. So again, that's one thing that the bulls are working on right now, is trying to reclaim prices back above the previous session's close. That would give a nice little springboard effect higher. Otherwise, failure to hold 2616 would suggest more downside pressure toward new lows. So I guess right now all eyes on the previous session's low right now. If prices cannot reestablish back above that zone, we could be looking at least a move back toward 2600, perhaps even below. Alright, let's take a look at the NQ here. The NQ looking very similar. Again, the level we were looking to on the upside and continue to look to is the 66.5375. That level has been such a precision pivot in the charts that we continue to watch it time and time again as a target and also as a pivot of bias. So down here when we rejected these lows, it was a target. Up here, failing to hold above those highs, it was a target. Right now it's a measure of bias as price continues to hold below that level, suggesting that we remain in this lower distribution between 62.30 and 66.50. But right now, again, if prices start to push back above the previous session's low, indicating rejection, then that could look again something similar to this scenario here, where we start to push higher, perhaps returning back to that FOMC key level at 69.17 quarter. So remember, we're going to move away from that level until we find rejection. Once we find rejection, then we start to return back to that level. So have we found rejection enough to return to this level? We'll see. And again, this was a pretty impressive day. Yesterday was more digestion. Today is about seeing a continuation. Can we hold above this low? If so, very similar to the ES, we could squeeze. Otherwise, failing to hold 6,500 opens up a return to recent and previous lows. Alright, let's take a look at crude oil. I mentioned before that crude was in a position to see some pretty significant strength, at least back towards 67 to 66, recent highs here. And the idea was that bulls wanted to keep the 62.85's bid. That was the midpoint on this rejection day. Also prior lows at around 62.80. So that creates a little zone there that bulls want to defend. In the previous session, bulls came in a little early, so I cautioned our trading room to watch for signs of a failed new low in the upcoming day. So we're right at the level right now, trading 62.95, coming just off the lows here. This would be about as low as bulls would comfortably want price to go. This is the ideal entry zone if price is going to push into those 66s. Otherwise, failure to hold 62.80, basically closing below that level, would suggest a failure and a push into 60 to 60.12. So right now we are at the pivot right here where it makes bulls and bears, everything's on the line at the moment, as bears are trying to run those stops and push it to the next pivot, whereas bulls are trying to continue to absorb after the rejection for a shot at returning this thing higher. So right now we're at that pivot. Alright, let's take a look at gold. With gold futures, we're in a very clear trading range, but we're at the center of that range. So I've cautioned for You know, be careful in this area because you could see some whipsaw, some chop in this area. The best zones are out here at the edges. This is where price is the best for returning to value, right? Or returning to the center of that range. And in here, you get lots of chop back and forth. So you avoid the middle chop. Right now, we're kind of in the middle with a downward bias. So we've just rejected the recent highs, lower highs here. Just beware there could be additional chop, but the bias is currently to the downside as price approaches recent lows between 1300 and 1310. Again, if price were to reach those zones, until proven otherwise, the goal will still be to look to fade it and return it back toward 1330 to 1338. So again, the goal is still to fade the edges of this range until proven otherwise. At some point, we'll see significant expansion. We'll trade that when it happens. All right, taking a look lastly at Bitcoin. Here's a look at Bitcoin. Basically, we had a great rejection at this zone here before, but now coming into the current view, we're not seeing any kind of reaction. And I've mentioned before that I believe you need to really flush these lows below 6,700, below 5880 in order to really see a major rejection and a reaction. It's going to take a major meltdown day for it to start to get to prices where bulls will want to look to defend it, and that's going to be somewhere below here. So again, we're getting closer and closer to that point. You got to be patient. At some point, you're going to see it happen, and then that's going to be the opportunity for you to position yourself for potential move back toward 12K. So that's what we'll be looking for in that scenario. One last thing. If you go to PivotBoss.com and click on news, it'll take you down here to our latest news and analysis section here. Click on read our blog, and when you do that, that'll take you to a more expanded view here of some of our recent blog posts, and you can also click on older posts here. But this is what you're going to want to look for here is the recording. It's probably going to be pushed down to the last one. This is the April monthly outlook recording. If you click on here, you'll be able to find the video from Monday's session. It's a good session. We had a stock picking session. Some of those stocks that we picked in that session, especially some of our favorites, have worked out really nicely. For example, one of the ones that we were looking at was PBF as a great buy candidate. So far it has done really well. CLR is another one that we were looking as a buy candidate. Ended up pushing through resistance and reaching the first level target already. So a couple of great candidates already coming out of that monthly outlook. And again, I've been asked many times where that recording is, so you can find it back at pivotboss.com right at that link. Again, pivotboss.com. Check it out. Let me know what you think. All right, have a fantastic rest of your day. Happy Friday, and have a great weekend. Talk to you soon. Take care.